And we'll finish off today with a look at the course overview and then just some of the syllabus highlights, just so that we're all prepared and on the same page in terms of what's happening this semester. All right, so the rest of this information will be available on the syllabus that you can download from Canvas. In addition, the slides that I use in class will also be available unless there's like a spoiler alert, like next class when we're doing our in-class experiment. So they'll usually be available before class for you to download and access. And on the days where I can't do that, they'll definitely be available after class for you to download. So this isn't a speed writing course. You can print these out or just know that you have them available to you whenever you might need them. All right, so course objectives. This is where you're basically going to learn how to design and execute experiments in psychology, how to search the literature, how to prepare an experimental report, how to read experimental reports. So this really is an important component of your psychology education, because almost all psychology comes from experiments that discover how your mind works. So in order to advance psychology, you need to know these experimental techniques in order to add to the body of knowledge of psychology. And then on the flip side of that, if you want to read about and learn about the information in psychology, it's all there in those experimental reports. So you're transitioning right now, you're transforming beyond information that has been condensed and summarized for you in, say, for example, a textbook, to individuals that can find the latest information, can find their own information, and can make their own interpretations of what that means. So that's what part of this course is going to be about, learning how to understand experiments so that you can benefit from that in your psychology career, regardless of whether you ever do an experiment again. So some of the objectives include using deductive reasoning. We'll take a look at that. Preparing an experimental report, a research paper in APA format. So you will be writing a research paper. I'll talk more about that in just a moment. Interpreting simple statistics. It's not a statistics course, but it will let you know a little bit about what you need, just what you need for understanding the experiment that we're going to be doing. How to search the literature using databases. We're going to have a special class where we go to the library and we learn how to search databases that you're probably already familiar, including other ones like Web of Science that are very useful, especially for people starting out in a field. Web of Science is an absolutely crucial resource. Critically evaluating information. How do you distinguish primary and secondary sources? And also you'll be peer reviewing each other's work as we start writing our research report. And then other things that are involved in experimental psychology. We'll kind of take a broad overview of all the skills that you need in order to do and understand experimental psychology. This, you saw the critical thinking aspect there. This course actually does fulfill IUSB's critical thinking requirement. So we will, throughout the year, practice and assess these skills on critical thinking as we move through the course content. All right, so let's take a little bit of a interlude here, and we'll do a little bit of history. So we're going to go over some great thinkers who have made contributions to psychology. So Plato and Aristotle, started these huge schools of philosophy. Psychology has often been described as just scientific philosophy. So they kind of came in with a lot of the original ideas that psychologists later on said, hey, let's actually test these and see if these thinkers had the right idea. If you're doing cognitive psychology, you can thank Ada Lovelace, the first computer programmer, for laying down some of the ideas about algorithms and steps that we can use to solve computational problems. We got Nietzsche, another philosopher who Sigmund Freud said was the most self-aware person that he had ever met. And speaking of Sigmund Freud, we have him as well, a great thinker that contributed lots of ideas to psychology. Very importantly, the idea that we are unaware of a lot of the things that influence our behavior. So that idea of the unconscious mind that is driving a lot of our behaviors, that was his idea that really made almost all of psychology possible. So we have these four great thinkers, four great people that contributed a lot to psychology. But as great as they were not experimental psychologists. And because of that, a lot of the ideas that they came up with were just simply incorrect. So Plato and Aristotle, Aristotle had this whole theory of physics that stood around for about 2,000 years before it was disproven, and it was literally like cartoon physics. So if you've ever watched a cartoon where somebody runs off a cliff and they continue running until they stop and then they look down and they fall down, that's Aristotle's physics. That's what he actually thought would occur. And then other, Sigmund Freud, a lot of his theories have just gone by the wayside, just been proved not to actually be true. So they made great contributions, but they weren't experimental psychologists, and that limited their ability to advance psychology. What we're going to do is we're going to take you guys, who are all great thinkers, made it here to university, and we're going to change you from somebody like Aristotle, who came up with an idea, but it was the wrong idea, to somebody like Newton, who was an experimentalist, who came up with ideas and said, let me test these. Let me evaluate these. Let me use experiments to figure out, are these ideas true? And then if they were supported, he said, yes, they're true. If they were refuted, he said, no, let me try something else. So that's the goal of this course, to take you from being, great thinkers to experimental thinkers. So this course, again, is going to give you new tools. It's going to change the way that you think. You're going to learn how to think like an experimental scientist. So you're going to go from being Plato or Ada, and you're going to become Isaac Newton. And this is something that needs to be developed. So experimental thinking, experimental procedures, these are skills that are not intuitive. These are things that people don't naturally develop on their own. So they need to be developed. They need to be taught. They're not natural. But that's actually really, really good news, because I'm going to assume that everybody is starting at the beginning, right? I'm going to assume that nobody has been perusing Isaac Newton and B.F. Skinner's Wikipedia page, just brushing up on, on a Friday night. You're like, oh yeah, let me see where the rabbit hole goes on my experimental psychology. No, I don't think, everybody here, I'm assuming you're starting at the beginning. So that's how this course is going to be structured. And then the other thing I want everybody to know is that everyone can do this. So experimental thinking is not the purview of, geniuses that, are these super agile minds. Everybody can do this. This is a structured way of thinking that everyone can learn and then apply in their clinical psychology practice, in their teaching psychology, in any sort of psychology that you want to do. All right, course procedure. I'm going to run this course like a research lab meeting. That's how I do most of my courses. So all course content is open to ideas and discussion. Just raise your hand. Look at that slide. Dr. Yudichevich, is this like this? Dr. Yudichevich, I just read this thing about this. Dr. Yudichevich, does this work like this? Anything that you want to know, please raise your hand. I am a firm believer that there are no bad questions or bad ideas. So everybody knows that that phrase, there's no bad questions except the one that's not asked. So there's no bad questions, there's no bad ideas. However, there are wrong ideas. And my experience has been that many of your ideas are going to be wrong, because again, this is not an intuitive way of thinking. So your ideas, you might actually have 95% of your ideas might be wrong. You might put up your hand and say, Dr. Yudichevich, does this work? Is this what you mean by an independent variable? And the answer could very well be no, it's not. That's actually the dependent variable. But that's just the way that science works. That's basically my life every single day. So many experiments that I'm like, oh, this is for sure going to happen, turn out the other way. And then other experiments where I'm like, this experiment has no chance, end up being huge findings. So science and experimental science is basically just feeling around in the dark, trying to figure out what's out there. What does nobody know yet? What are we going to discover? And when you're trying to discover something, you're going to be wrong a lot. So don't feel intimidated about being wrong. We'll correct your ideas. We'll get you on the right track. And just know that that's my life. That's my career that I chose. So I'll understand, no bad ideas, no bad questions. Let's make sure that everybody is moving forward. All right, syllabus and contact information. Again, make sure that you take a look at the class schedule. All the due dates are there. You can plan out your semester. And do make sure that you don't miss any due dates. Maximize your points. And that's what we're going to be doing through this class.